Apple's flagship phone, the iPhone 7 Plus, has one of the best cameras around. But it came out last year, and now Samsung is here with its new flagship, the Galaxy S8 Plus. Let's put the two smartphones against each other in a camera showdown. First, let's compare specs. The iPhone 7 Plus's main camera has a 12 megapixel sensor, a fast f1.8 lens, and a DCI P3 color gamut. The Galaxy S8 Plus also has a 12 megapixel sensor, an even faster f1.7 lens, and large 1.4 micron pixels. On paper this looks like a close fight, but we'll have to see in real-world testing. Second, we need to set some parameters, so I'll be using these cameras the way most people do, in auto mode. That means straight out of the pocket, using the stock app, with HDR on auto. The only setting I'm changing is megapixel count, going for the full resolution of each camera. Now to the testing. I'm going to be focusing on three main categories: color, clarity, and range. First up is color, and what I'm looking for is accuracy, vividness, and how the camera balances color temperature. I was in Las Vegas recently for the NAB show and was able to get a wide variety of shots, like this one outside of Caesars. Here both cameras handle themselves well in full light and produce vivid colors, but the S8 pumps up the contrast and is a bit cooler than the 7 Plus. The 7 Plus handles the white balance a bit better on this indoor shot at the Apple Store, but it did have home field advantage. And the GS8 warms this shot up as well, resulting in the purple turning a bit more magenta. Heading into the convention center, we have a camera testing setup, and the 7 Plus warms up the scene enough to discolor the models. The S8 is accurate on color balance, but is a bit washed out. This green screen setup also shows that the 7 Plus leaned to the warmer side, failing to give us an accurate white on the left. And it once again took the skin tones of the model to a horrible place. Both cameras really struggle with accurate white balance, so it's really down to saturation and color depth. And even though the iPhone 7 Plus technically has a wider color gamut, the Galaxy S8 just has a more pleasing variance in colors. I'm going to give the color category to the Samsung Galaxy S8, but only by a legendary pickle. The next test is clarity. And here I'm looking not only at the sharpness of each image, but how the camera chooses to stay sharp even in low light. This first shot of the strip is clear enough from a distance, but when you zoom in on Treasure Island, we see that you can make out much more detail in the shutters with the S8. Samsung applies a healthy amount of sharpening to get there, but it's still a clearer image. Moving inside, it's the same story. We can just see more information in the grass here. This darker scene reveals the same thing. Even in low light, the S8 is clearer than the 7 Plus. And in this very dark scene, I'm super happy with how the S8 looks, while the 7 Plus really disappoints. So I'm giving the clarity category to the Samsung Galaxy S8. The last category is range. Here I'm looking for how much light information the camera is able to capture and how it chooses to expose for the scene. Let's use the histogram, and here's the basic way to read it. All of the hills on the right side of the histogram represent the bright areas of the image, while the hills on the left side represent all of the dark areas. You want the exposure to fall somewhere in between, otherwise you start to lose information. This first shot outside of Harrah's is exposed pretty similar on both cameras, but we are retaining a lot more information in the shadows on the S8. Moving to this statue, we see that the 7 Plus holds the highlights better, but at the cost of the rest of the scene underexposing. Moving inside, the 7 Plus does the opposite, blowing out the highlights on the model and the sign. This wider shot of the show floor is the same, with the S8 holding the highlights way better, albeit at the expense of some info in the shadows. Overall, I was disappointed with how the 7 Plus performed in high contrast scenarios, and never really exposing the shot how I wanted. This category easily goes to the Samsung Galaxy S8. So the Samsung Galaxy S8 Plus takes all three categories, proving that Apple has some catching up to do this year with the next iPhone. Not to mention that the S8 isn't even the best camera in the Android arena. We gave that honor to the LG G6. So the challenge falls on Apple to not only push its camera forward, but still add groundbreaking features like the portrait mode. And dear God, please add a manual mode, Apple.